Good morning and thank you for joining us for the Fire Situation Report for this morning, Monday, October 26, 2015. I'm Daniel Berlant coming to you live from the CAL FIRE headquarters in Sacramento. Those of you joining us on Periscope this morning, welcome. If you have any questions this morning on the fire risk in California or about El Nino, let us know. We have a meteorologist from the Weather Service who will be joining us in just a moment to talk a little bit more about what El Nino means to us here in California. Now, last week, our crews responded to 99 new wildfires up and down the state. Even with those cooler temperatures, we're still seeing the fire risk much higher than we typically would for this time of year. I want to show you a couple photos of some of the fires that we responded to. This was a 5-acre fire just south of San Jose near Santa Teresa County Park. Again, firefighters quickly able to jump on it in the early hours containing that fire. This is about a 4-acre fire near Milpitas in Santa Clara County with the help of Spring Valley Fire Department, CAL FIRE crews, and other Milpitas Fire Department crews were able to quickly contain this fire over the weekend as well. 4 acres burned in Santa Clara County. And this last fire, a 1/4 of an acre burned in Cambria. That's on the coast in San Luis Obispo County. So you see, we're still seeing the fire activity, just not as large and damaging as we have seen in the past over the last several months. I want to switch over to our statewide fire map where you can see there are still 6 active fires burning in California. Most of those have been burning now for several months as the National Forest continues to work towards containment on those fires. One fire, though, I do want to give you an update on is the Rough Fire. That's burning in Fresno County. The Rough Fire has now burned 151,623 acres and is now 95% contained. So a very large fire. In fact, one of the largest, not only of this year, the largest of the year, but also one of the largest fires that we've seen in our recorded history, making the top 15 here. But there are still some areas here on the eastern side of the fire that crews are still working towards full containment on. So there's still a lot of firefighters assigned to these 6 fires. Now, overall, since January 1st, there have been 7,934 wildfires, so nearly 8,000 wildfires up and down the state. Those fires have burned nearly 825,000 acres. Now, as I mentioned, 100 fires just last week. That's with temperatures still cooling down from what we saw over the summertime, but with some discussion of rain, even some discussion of possibly above average rain in some parts of the state, which we'll get to here momentarily. The risk for large and damaging fires is starting to decrease. In fact, across much of the state as we transition into November, we're going to go from above average risk for large fires down to just a normal risk. So still even normal means we could still see fires like we talked about, 5-acre fires here and there. So the need to still work towards making sure you're extra safe and taking precaution to prevent new fires still remains important. So joining me now is from the National Weather Service Warning Coordination Coordinator and Meteorologist Michelle Mead. Michelle, thanks for joining us and talking to us. What's really been all over a lot of people's minds, which when is the rain going to come?
Right. Not only when is the rain going to come, but what does El Nino mean for me? So basically what I want to tell folks about today is define exactly what El Nino is. I get a lot of calls and people wanting to know when is the El Nino storm going to hit. Well, El Nino is not a storm. As you can see here, what we do is we monitor the temperatures along the waters in the Pacific Ocean along the equator. And what you're looking at here is difference from normal. Basically what it's showing is these temperatures are above average. About 1.5 degrees above average, and there we go. And this warming of the sea surface temperature actually has a direct correlation with the atmosphere. So if we move on, this is what a typical cool season winter weather pattern looks like in El Nino. What it means is that warming of the sea surface temperatures, this is our jet stream or our storm track. What I really want to point out here is the shaded green area here is basically over Southern California. So that means the strongest signal with an El Nino is for Southern California to see increased precipitation and the potential for above average precipitation. The rest of the state, we're in this could be 50-50 zone. However, past El Ninos, strong El Ninos across California, since we've been keeping records with the ability to track this stuff, has been since 1950, and we've had 6 strong El Ninos in that time frame. And of those 6, it's pretty much been a slam dunk for Southern California, where you've seen at or above average precipitation. But for Northern California, it really has been kind of a toss-up. 4 of the 6 were at or above average, but 2 of the 6 were actually below average.
So the bottom line is just because we're in an El Nino season doesn't necessarily mean above average rainfall. It's just an above average potential, right?
Correct. So we want to keep folks in mind that, of course, if you live in Southern Cal, especially in flood-prone areas or areas with recent burn scars, and I think that's my next slide here. Oh, sorry. So this is the actual winter outlook. And also the signal for our El Nino really doesn't kick in for us in Central and Northern Cal for the latter half of winter, basically the end of December through January, February, and March. And what these green areas show here are actually the potential for seeing at or above average precipitation. Doesn't mean this is how much above average we're going to get, just the potential that we'll see at or above average. And keep in mind, it took us 4 years to get into this drought and these fire conditions. Even one at or slightly above average year would not wipe out those conditions.
Yeah, and that's a question we get all the time is, you know, even after one storm, because we've had rainfall even here on the map in Southern California this summer, but we still, after a week or so of dry temperatures, that rain, while it was nice and maybe on the weather side was great, on the fire side it dries back out. So as you said, it's going to take a lot more. Maybe you could walk us through what the different color coverages here over California mean. Okay,
so down here in extreme Southern California, the 60% basically means we should see above average precip for the latter part of the winter season. It's about an 80% chance of seeing above average precipitation. So as you step northward, when you get up here into the northern part, that 33% means basically a 66 to 73% of at or above average. Now, keep in mind, the folks who put this together, they're not telling us how much above average. So if we even see a 1/10 of an inch above average in a given month, that's a slam dunk. That means we saw above average precipitation. However, a 1/10 of an inch is not going to save us from 4 years. We're basically, if you look at the 8, the 5, and the 6 station index, which is what we help with the water supply and also what CAL FIRE relies on too for resources, we're at least a year's worth missing of precipitation.
Wow.
And that did reset October 1st. So we need quite a bit of rain and snow, of course. And these outlooks also will not give us those big storms, those atmospheric rivers, or those big Sierra storms, the ones that come in with the cold weather. They're just going to give us the probability of seeing at or above average precipitation. It's the short-term forecast, my office and the 10 offices across California that forecast those big events and the local impact that they will have across the state.
Now, the above average rainfall, what are the months we're looking at that we could possibly start seeing this? Because here we are beginning, almost ready to begin November. I know the rainy season's typically December, January, and February. Is there a discussion of when El Nino would start, or is it a slow transition? When will we see that?
So the El Nino, like I said, is already here. So the sea surface temperatures in the atmosphere are starting to make the connection. The wetter than average will actually start in Southern Cal starting November, so this coming month. And then it won't be, and that will continue from November through April, the potential anyway. For Northern Cal, we do have to wait till the latter part of December into the January, February, March timeframe. The good news about that is for water supply, the storms that usually help recharge the reservoirs, those are our critical months. December, January, and February are the wettest months of our rainy period. So as long as we see that potential up there, that gives us hope that the storms that come in January, February, March will have enough moisture in them to reach those averages.
Okay. Switching over here to, obviously we've had a lot of fires this year, especially we talked about nearly 8,000 fires, burn scars. What's the risk, obviously, we've talked last week about flooding and other stuff, but maybe you can talk to us a little bit about what we have here.
So what I wanted to show here is, yes, all the recent fires have definitely been in everyone's mind, but keep in mind we've had some pretty big fires in even the previous 2 years, the Rim, the King, the American. Those fires have yet to be tested. What that means is we haven't seen a lot of rain in our wet season. So these burn scars haven't really seen the precipitation that could cause issues. Debris flows, flash flooding, things of that nature. So I wanted to put this up there to keep folks in mind. Not only should you be situationally aware if you're near one of the recent burn scars, but also the ones in the Sierra Nevada, the American, the King, the Rim. Work with your local emergency management, work with CAL FIRE and be like, am I in a risk area? And what should I do to prepare if I am? Do I need mitigation or things in place for when that should happen?
Which transitions well, talking about what heavy rainfall could do to these burned areas.
That's correct. So what my office does, and the offices around California, is we work with the counties to alert folks who are in potential risk of these burn scars. So burn scars typically need a high-intensity, short-duration event or a thunderstorm to trigger a landslide. Not always. You can also have like a couple of days of light rain ahead of a storm that does have some heavier precip, and those can all trigger landslides and debris flows. So our office is working very closely with the partners, including USGS and the counties, to ensure that we know the areas at risk and we know who to warn for. Because if we just put out a generic flash flood debris warning for the Butte burn scar and people are like, well, okay, but what part? If we know the at-risk areas, the certain roads or structures that are in danger, we can put that actually in the warning, and hopefully it'll get folks, hey, that actually means something to me. Also, keep in mind, anyone with a smartphone, the wireless emergency alert will also be triggered for a flash flood or debris flow warning. So you would know right away, as long as you're in cell coverage, that there has been a warning issued for your area.
Gotcha. Now, we've talked about the work that we go in after a fire, making sure that we're taking those steps to put down straw, to divert the water, clean out channels so that if there's excess water, that water is channeled properly and prevent flooding. But you guys are monitoring these areas specifically and looking at the potential where that rainfall will occur and in what time amount to give people that warning, then it sounds like.
Correct. Yeah. So what we do is in our systems is we put the burn scars in there and then we monitor the radar as it's coming in, and we can see the storms that are heading to these burn scars. We also have gauges around that we monitor to let us know how much rain is falling out of those cells. Is the storm intensifying or is it getting weaker? If it's intensifying, that's a, hey, we're worried about this area and we might put a warning out for that area. Or the storm is decreasing, we could just put an advisory out. There's still some thunderstorms in the area. The rain intensity looks weaker, however, you should still be alert to any possible issues.
Now with this year, we saw, you can just see here in the red, the amount of fires and large fires and, the burn intensity of these fires just completely, charring the landscape. Do you feel this year there's, extra potential risk in these burn scar areas because of just how many and again, just how hot these fires burn?
Well, every winter season or wet season, we always tell folks to prepare for flooding. Folks, near any burn scar this year or recent years needs to be a heightened awareness. You need to know your surroundings, situational awareness, keep alert to the forecast. Is there something that I need to be concerned with? So yes, like you mentioned, the fires have been burning hotter and they are having an impact on the ground underneath. So it basically acts like rock or concrete, so it flows right off, which of course increases the flooding risk and or debris flow if it's able to get in there and loosen some of that top landmass.
Yeah, and that's where our crews are working right now to make sure that any brush that may clog up those streams or those waterways is removed so that those channels can take that water. Now we have a good question here. Even if El Nino occurs, which it sounds like is already occurring, will this be enough to get us out of the drought? And I know that's probably a question you get all the time.
Right, and like I mentioned earlier, it took us 4 years to get into this drought, and El Nino is only the potential for above average precip. It's not a guarantee, and even 1 year of above average is not going to wipe out 4 years of drought. So unfortunately, it's possible, it's not probable.
Yeah, one of the things we always get asked, because we've had rainfall even, this year in certain areas, isn't it enough for the trees and the vegetation to soak in to reduce the fire risk? And unfortunately, it's going to take a lot more rain for those trees to really soak in multiple storms.
Correct.
It's not for us, not just the amount of rain, it's also the time period of rain as well, which I would assume is especially some of the risk for the flooding. Again, those streams can handle the water, but it's in that short amount of time.
Right, and that's the thing I think folks need to keep in mind about atmospheric rivers or those big storms, the Pineapple Expresses that we can get, is it can bring a month's worth of precipitation in a couple of days. The bad news is it can bring a month's worth of precipitation in a couple of days. So the small creeks, reservoirs, the big rivers and reservoirs can handle it. It's the small creeks and streams, they're going to have the issues. The urban areas are going to see a lot of runoff, and that's where we end up with our flash flooding problems and also our debris scar problems.
There's been a lot here in the media that's really played up this year's El Nino season. Where can people find information, though, good information from you guys about, the current weather conditions, also looking at what we can expect with this El Nino for somebody's certain area? What's a good site for them?
So the Climate Prediction Center, they're our El Nino experts, and they put out monthly updates, and they also put out weekly updates. We have information on our webpage, and we also put quite a bit of information on Facebook and Twitter, kind of updating folks of what this means to me for Northern and Central California.
And what's your Facebook page for great graphics like this and even some of these educational graphics like this?
So NWS Sacramento is our Twitter handle and our Facebook. So just Facebook and NWS Sacramento. You can find us there.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Michelle.
Yep.
Again, for more information on El Nino and on weather, visit the Weather Services Facebook page. There's different offices as well, not just the Sacramento one, so you can find your local area as well. Now, for the latest on fires that are burning here in California, as we talked about, the risk has not completely gone away. You can always visit us at fire.ca.gov or follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. Now, that's the latest on the fire situation here in California. I'm Daniel Berlant. Have a fire-safe week.